This is called Pretty for a Dark-Skinned Girl. You're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. The typical expression to give praise to your looks while downplaying your complexion. This type of compliment is conveyed with the deception that dark women ain't really cute, but you make a good exception.
Come on.
As if black and beautiful cannot coexist ever since the fall of man, our view of beauty has gone adrift. When sin entered the world, so did opinion. We went from behold, it was good to what can we do to fix it?
Wow. Yeah.
So let's take a ride and travel through time to a king who had 700 wives and 300 concubines. He knew a woman from every creed and every tribe, but only one caught his eye to make him start writing rhymes. The Song of Solomon. Written to extol his melanated lover, and to the surprise of many, this lover was none other than the Shulamite. Translated into Hebrew as "Oh, perfect one," but unconvinced of her own essence, this title she would shun. At first she said, "I am dark, but lovely." Probably said it with a snap. But then she said, "Look not upon me, because I am black." You ever felt like that? Come on, let's be true. One moment you're on top of the world, the next the world is on top of you. Injustice and mistreatment has put us on the defense, handling our uniqueness as a defect. They ridicule our fuel to keep it locked within our chocolate skin, then wonder why we're not comfortable in the shoes they mock us in. In this instance, we must keep in remembrance that pigment doesn't negate that we're made in God's image. So despite what the serpent tells you on the surface level, there is still a certain treasure in your earthen vessel. But let's get back to Solomon. Because Solomon made a song praising a black woman. Which is why today's music makes me sick to my stomach. We went from "Return, O Shulamite, that we may look upon thee," to "Where them yellow bones, I don't want no black." And we lift our hands and we do our dance to songs infused with the mission statement of the Ku Klux Klan. We're too tough, man, too cheap to the wind, too sleep to the fan. Come on, man. God planted a beautiful garden, but while men slept, tares are planted amongst the harvest. And because we were too those to stand strong and forced our women to put pants on and assume the man role, we were supposed to protect you.
Yes.
We were supposed to uplift you.
Yes.
I will stand before you guiltless sentence I repent to. For every song I played that called you out your name and looked past your crown and reinforced your chains, and every time my insecurities left you perplexed, and every time I reintroduced the brown paper bag test. Y'all know they used to hold a brown paper bag to our face like this, and if you were lighter, you progress. If you were darker, they said, "Next, our society been a mess." Racism and colorism. What will it take to liberate us from this prison? How about a brown-skinned Middle Eastern Jew, one who would lay down his life for me and you? And skin color didn't affect his decision to spread love, showing that the only color with superiority is his red blood. Man, what? You are valid no matter what skin you're in. You're not pretty for a dark-skinned girl. You're pretty.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
And this is to every tone, every hue, and every shade. You are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Okay, guys, so that was a poem called Pretty for a Dark-Skinned Girl. I'm gonna put it in my bio in my Instagram so that if you guys want to go back and listen to it, you can. I was just waiting for the people who have asked to join us to be ready and come through. For everybody who doesn't know what we're talking about today, we will be talking about colorism within the Black community. This is mainly like the reason why I'm talking about it is because I don't know if any of y'all have been following like all the drama that's going on in the UK with like Nella Rose, Mr. 200, like all like the really big influencers are having like a little like beef situation, not beef, but like there's a lot of conversation about tweets that they sent when they were younger that seemed to suggest that there was hatred for darker skinned Black people. And so I thought it would be a really important conversation to have whilst like things are still popping, and I wanted to bring it to my timeline and have the conversation with you guys, and essentially just talk about like what does colorism mean to us, like does it really exist, does it affect us, and I say us, but like does it affect people, do people know what it is, and kind of just talking about what does colorism look like in today's world, and figuring out how we can better prepare ourselves to respond to it in a way that brings education rather than like causing problems, additional problems. So I have like a presentation because I care about you guys so much. And I'm going to give a quick disclaimer before anybody jumps in and asks questions or contributes. A quick disclaimer is that I'm not claiming to know everything, and the people who are going to be here are not claiming to know everything, but we are going to be sharing our opinions and our experiences, and we're going to answer any of the questions based on our feelings of things, and that's not like the be it of everything. If you have anything that you want to like get clarification on, Google is your homie, Google is your best friend, so hop onto Google, they've got your back. And yeah, you can get more information that way. I'm gonna be doing this series for the rest of the month. So this week we're gonna be talking about colorism within the Black community. Next week we're gonna be talking about colorism within the brown community, and then the third week we're gonna be talking about whether there is such a thing as colorism in the Caucasian community, and if there is, like, what does that look like? And then the final week, I'm trying to get us guest hosts to really talk to us about how we can strategize and really make sure we're, you know, living our best lives amidst all of these situations. So I have asked a couple of people to join me as like guest hosts today. And so, if you want to be part of the live session, just request to be added, and I can add you whether I spoke to you or not. Just let me know, and I can add you. I think Beth is here, and my girl was supposed to be added, but I don't know if I can just like add you. So I'm gonna be adding Beth because that's who I saw first. But if you want to be added, just let me know and I can add you. Whilst we wait for Beth, I'm actually good, baby. So what do you do, baby?
I'm chilling. I was just watching Lupita Nyong'o interviews.
Oh.
I was priming my brain, you know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Literally, I've been watching so many YouTube videos today because I didn't want to come here and be like, colorism, what is it? And have like no idea what it was. So like I've read like article after article after article, and I've tried to kind of come up with like as many definitions and put them into like one definition that makes sense. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before we start, I'm just gonna define colorism in case there are people who don't know what it is, because I found out today that there are actually a lot of people who don't know what it is. And I guess if it doesn't really affect you, you might not really know what it is. So I'm just gonna define it. I got two definitions. One was actually the word colorism was first coined in 1982 by Alice Walker, and she defined it as prejudicial or preferential treatment of same race people based solely on their color. Um, and then another definition that I got that I felt like gave like a little more flesh to the definition was that colorism is a form of racial discrimination based on the shade of an individual's skin tone, typically favoring lighter skin. It can occur both within a specific ethical group and also across ethical groups. So, Miss Beth, talk to me. Okay, introduce yourself first. Tell us who you are, and then after that, this is going to be such an odd question, and I know I'm putting you on the spot right now, but how would you describe your skin tone?
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I'm Beth.
That's good.
I'm from Goroka because I went to Trent temporarily. Long time. My history with Trent is complicated. But anyways, right now I am kind of in a transition stage. I'm using this quarantine downtime to work on a lot of projects that I've kind of like hadn't had time for.
Mm.
And I'm somebody who's like was super involved on campus when I was enrolled, and even in the year after I stopped taking classes. But yeah, my skin tone. It's interesting.
Mhm.
The camera is definitely making me like this angle lighting is making me look lighter than I actually am. Definitely. Because I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh shit. Like,
You look hella light, baby.
like, give me a second. Still.
Let's go. Let's go embrace it.
The light bulb. But I think I don't know. This is kind of a word other people have used often, but caramel. I get caramel a lot. I always hear that. And what's also really funny to me is like my friends have debated, like I say,
Hmm.
debated
Hmm.
whether or not I'm light skin or dark skin. Like so many people,
Really?
at least 3 times in my life, I have sat down and there's been a great event where there's been an hour, multiple people arguing. Beth is light skin, Beth is dark skin, Beth is neither skin. And it's such a funny conversation to me because like I've never cared as much as the people who are debating, you know?
Hmm.
Nearly as much
But
as
like, how would you describe yourself? Do you class
Hmm.
yourself as like light skin or dark skin, or in between, or?
I think I'm in the middle. You can't really put me in either camp definitively. That's how I identify. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. To be transparent, I feel like I'm a bit of a dwarky. I'm a dwark chocolate. That's how I would identify. I would describe myself as like a dwark chocolate, something, something. I mean, I would like to be a little bit dwarker, but you know, we work with what we got. Um, so the next question I want to ask you is, what does colorism mean to you, and has it had any effect on the way you live your life?
Yeah, so
Also,
colorism.
I'm gonna preface by saying this is a safe space, guys. We're encouraging conversation. We don't know everything. So please be nice and ask your questions. If you have questions for Beth, have questions for me, hit us up. Yeah, carry on. This is a safe space. I just thought I should put that out there.
Of course, of course. What does colorism mean to me? That was that the whole question? That was the second part of the question.
What does colorism mean to you? And do you think it's affected the way that you live your life in any way?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so what it means to me, I'm pretty in line with the definition you gave earlier. Like, it's something, Lupita Nyong'o was just saying that I was just watching. that really struck me was she was just saying it's like the daughter of racism. It's not racism. It's in and of itself, it's gone way beyond racism. It's kind of like it wouldn't exist without racism. That's kind of where it started, from racism towards especially Black people and brown skinned folks and everybody. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it happens within societies, right? Within the same race, within the same group of people, et cetera, et cetera. And my own experience with it is kind of interesting, like because I consider myself somewhere in the middle. I don't really think I have a gauge. I don't think I'm conscious of when and how often I experience colorism. Like I definitely can tell you when I experience racism. I can point out almost every single time, and even sometimes I'm speculating too much. We all get conspiracy about it, like it's because I'm Black. We all get right, but um, if I colorism, like I see it when it happens to my friends who are darker skinned. I see
Mm-hmm.
it when, lighter skinned friends are preferred, etc. I see it happening around me, but I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't in my life place myself within those experiences because I don't know. Like I don't. I just.
Do you think that maybe just putting that like out there, when I see you being like lighter, you're definitely on the like light side of the spectrum, right?
Mhm.
So do you think that maybe you aren't aware of it because it doesn't really affect you that much?
Honestly, yeah, that's a very good chance. Like I definitely can see that being possible. In a way, it kind of sounds like it's just a stone's throw away from a white person saying, "Well, I don't see racism." Like it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of, but I'm not saying it with that same like, "Oh, it doesn't exist, therefore." It's kind of
Yeah,
a yeah, like
I see that. Yeah, yeah,
the problem, like I
yeah.
think here someone hey mom, um, asked how do you think that affects your conversation at the table, not knowing where to place yourself? I don't think there's a concrete definition of the different shades. Definitely agree there is no concrete definition. Um, how do I think that affects my conversation at the table? Definitely there's a sense of like, am I even qualified to talk about this? There's definitely other people who have more concrete, tangible lived experience and more, maybe more tangible things to say about it.
Yeah.
Um, I am the kind of person who observes systems as a whole, like very, very intently. So I think if I bring any value to this conversation, because that's up for y'all to decide, it probably lies in just the looking at it from a wide angle, kind of like I said, I've observed everyone around me and their experience
Mm-hmm.
very in detail and whatnot. But so yeah, like I guess at the end of the day, I'm no authority, but I'm no stranger either.
Yeah. I think even to just like the last question that Momo said was, I'm just trying to scroll through, y'all. I'm old. I got thick fingers. Blah, 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 blah. I don't think there's a concrete definition for the different shades. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like I don't think there's a concrete definition, but there's like an internal definition. So like depending on where you go, you kind of know, like generally speaking, like on the spectrums between like light and dark, you kind of find a place where you fit. So like depending on where I go, I could be classed as like the darkest in the room, or I can be classed as like, I don't think I'd be the lightest in the room, but I could be like classed on the lighter side of the spectrum. So I
Mhm.
think it kind of it it has a lot to do with your I hate to say this, but your perception of what lightness and darkness is as well. I Someone asked me a question and they were like, so like who's to blame? Like who do we say like is the person who has created this like spectrum or like this these ideas of like light skin and dark skin and if you look at the root of it, it's like a lot of it was kind of suggested on us, well, not suggested, but like put on us, but we've internalized it as well and have almost perpetuated the bad habits that we inherited.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been ingrained over generations and generations.
Yeah. Has it affected you? I think that's a question for you, Beth.
Definitely. Has it affect? I think the question, has it affected you? And also Charmaine's, hi Charmaine, question about, do I feel more privileged? Both of those I think I can answer together. Because
Wait, could you read the question out loud in case the comments don't show when we post it again?
so one person asked, has it affected you? And then followed it up with, it's easy to place yourself in a place of privilege, but also I always try to tell people to understand that it affects them too. And then someone else asked, do you feel more privileged because you're a lighter complexion that is more privileged? And so the reason why I see both of them together is because how it has affected me is that, yes, I've seen myself, I think, getting privileged, but also at the same time, I think like part of why I came with that perspective of like not knowing kind of where I fit was because questioning where I fit wasn't something that I had to do until the last couple of years, like recently or so, just because I grew up in a place where there weren't many black people, period, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's black people, but they're all Ethiopians that I knew. It wasn't black people. All I knew is when I'm not with Ethiopians, I'm just black, apparently.
Got it.
Right? And so I didn't really, but I've definitely seen situations where like people have preferred to talk to me versus a darker skinned friend or I don't know, like one time me and a friend went to like interview for the same volunteer position and I'm telling you homegirl was more qualified than me, but like I got that position, It was just like, and that was here in this Peterborough, this very, very town with a lot of people. So like obviously my awareness about it, how it affects me could improve, but at the end of the day, I definitely would say I am in this sense of the spectrum of color definitely privileged yeah. I don't know, I lost my train of thought. I had an ending there, a conclusion, but
It was there somewhere in the yonders of the world.
I hope that does.
Does anybody else have any questions for Beth? Before we close with Beth and we get somebody else. Somebody, yeah. Someone, somewhere, someday, somebody. Okay, Beth, do you have any like closing remarks, any questions, anything for the audience before you leave us for the evening? Not chasing you off or anything. I just want to see if we can get other people in the conversation.
Honestly, not really, just because like I don't feel like this is the place for me to, continue rambling on. I definitely think there's other people that I really want to listen to myself and learn some more. So I am going to give the space to get ready for bed while I listen and ponder. And I may be asking questions. We'll see.
Wow, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate and value you for answering the questions. It's really important that we continue to have these conversations. Whether you're directly or indirectly affected, I think we all bring something different to the conversation, and it just helps to bring like it increases the knowledge that we have around the topic. So thank you so much. I appreciate you, baby girl. I think Charmaine said something. This is so interesting. Your volunteer job that you got over the darker skinned person. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's crazy is that like out there in the world, I know that's like not even the worst of things that people experience. Like to think that that's actually kind of minor.
Yeah. Mind boggling.
Good night.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Beth. Good night, sleep well. Okay, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Beth. Okay, yes, we've got Momo coming in to the chat room. We got Momo
Hi
in the
guys, I'm washing the
chat
dishes.
room. Okay, introduce yourself real quick and
Hi
tell the
guys,
people who you are
I'm
and
Mamu.
how you would describe your own skin.
I'm Mamu. I'm dark skinned. As you can, if you can't tell.
Get it, baby. Come
Wait,
on,
hold on.
come
I gotta
on.
wipe the screen. Anyways, so I'm Mamu. I'm dark skinned, and I wanted to join this conversation of colorism because I wanted to also like add on to Beth's point, which I thought was really important because that's my sister. Beth said that she herself hadn't experienced colorism in like a larger scale, but I thought it was going to be so important if like we talked about it in our own communities, because it's so easy for us to talk about colorism in a larger scale of things.
Yeah.
So saying like, oh, I'm dark skinned, so I face this, but then I'm dark skinned, I'm Tanzanian, how does that look in Tanzanian culture? You know what I'm saying? Because that changes things. Yeah, of course I'm gonna face colorism in Canada. It's Canada. But
Yeah.
facing colorism in my own culture, in my own with my own people is very different. And I wanted to hear your perspective on that, Ropa. Talk
My
about this.
perspective.
Yes, babe. How are you
Honestly,
feeling
like
about all of this?
I feel like with Zimbabwe, maybe not. I'm not gonna put it like as Zimbabwe as a whole, but in the community I grew up in, it was like if you were lighter, you were told to stay indoors.
Right.
So like they were like, you don't want to go outside and be like dark, so stay indoors so
Yes.
you can continue to be light. And it was like being light was like associated with being super smart, and it was associated with being like the bougie kids, the kids who stayed in the house, the kids who were like, you know, doing their thing. And like, but we also didn't have, yeah.
Did that
Go ahead.
also, did class also have something to do with that? Like if you were on the poorer side, was that also like added to it? Like, or was it
I
just
feel
your
like
skin tone?
we still had like, I remember we had like poor kids who lived like in the village, but they were super light. But because they were light, it was okay.
Right.
It's almost like because of your lightness, you transcended like everything else. Like it was like you've got like a green ticket to life, you'll be fine. But it was also if you were super, super, super dark, you were like a Nubian queen. You were like, yeah. So anything in the middle was like, pick a struggle, bro. Are you going to be dark skin or are you going to be light skin?
And I think both you and I fit in that middle spectrum because we're not necessarily considered dark skin. Well, we are dark skin, but I mean like we're not Sudanese, you know what I'm saying? But we're not obviously super light as well. Like we're not even caramel, like Beth put it, you know? We kind of fit in between. So I guess Khalid put up a really good point, and I want to ask him this question. Khalid, you said you used to bleach your nose. Is that just like a conversation? Khalid, shut up. Is that just because you thought that your nose was darker than the rest of your body, or is it just like a thing back home? Like, did you guys have to do it? Because, I don't know. Please explain to me, like, go into more detail about that. Because I'm so curious to see how that fits into our own culture. Because that's such a big thing, too, right?
Oh, true. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Collie on. Collie. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna let y'all know now. I'm gonna butcher a lot of y'all's names.
It's okay.
If you want to be featured, let me know. Just like request, and I'm gonna add you. But Mamo, like, how do you think it's affected you?
Yeah. Well, okay, so a lot of people know this about me, but I was born in Tanzania, and then I moved here when I was 12. So for me, I came from a community that was predominantly black and dark skinned, but Tanzania is also very colorist because I call it the melting pot of East Africa. Well, actually, Kenya is pretty there too, but Tanzania and Kenya, they have everything. Like my next door neighbor was Arab, and then the one next to her was Indian. You know, so there's just so many different cultures. So there was always room for conversation. And I remember having this conversation. I think it was with who was it? Tanashi, I think it was like 2 years ago. Basically saying that he came from a community where he was black, and it wasn't like a conversation where he fit. And then he got here and the narrative changed. Whereas for me, there was that conversation of who am I, and where do I fit in my community? But a lot of us were dark skinned, you know, so there was never question on where I fit. But then when I moved here and I lived in a predominantly white neighborhood, and then I went to school at Trent in a predominantly white environment, and I met a lot of people who were lighter than me, there was always that conversation of, am I taking too much space? Do you know what I'm saying? Because like there's always that conversation of, do you have to come back a little bit just so you're not intimidating, so you're not I guess too much for this like the space that's provided for you. That was always something I was very conscious of at the beginning. And in high school, like a lot of my friends can attest to this, I didn't really do much leadership wise. I did some, but it wasn't I wasn't president, I wasn't vice president, you know. I did things in an executive way, but I was director of events because I didn't want to take up the space because I didn't know where I fit in those conversations, you know. But then I got to Trent, and the first year it was all me taking a step back because there were these white people who were so well spoken, and they came from communities where they had never met people like me. And I was trying to figure out how I can represent myself and meet people from different communities, but not come off as an angry Black girl, because that's a narrative that's always put on us, especially if you're darker. If you're lighter, it's a bit more forgiving, you know. But when you're darker, it's very easy for your charisma and for your drive, your zeal, your passion to come off as intimidating, as taking too much space, you know. And I never wanted that to be the 4 years of Trent. And then when I got to second year, I got over myself and I was like, screw it, like if I'm gonna take over, I'm gonna take over, like you should have done more, you know. So I don't know, like let's talk about your leadership, because you're a woman. You take so much space, you know what I'm saying? Like you amaze everybody. So with you owning all these different spaces, like in the world of entrepreneurship, in the world of like leadership at school, like all of this stuff, how has that affected you in those spaces?
I honestly feel like the backlash I've gotten has been more from the Black community than it's been from anywhere else. So what I've realized is the spaces that I take up are predominantly spaces that you don't find a lot of Black people. That's what I'm beginning to realize, that like I almost feel comfortable with other groups of people, and even if there's judgment there, I don't take it personally, because I almost attribute it to, oh, they have lack of knowledge. I can teach that. I can answer that. But when it's your own people, it just burns a little bit differently. Like when a person from another race gives you like a young microaggression and they're like, oh, you pretty, you know, your hair is nice for like, you know. For me, the big thing is like your accent. Oh my gosh, you sound so white. You can't be from Africa. And I'm like,
you're used to it if it comes from a non-Black person. You're so used to it because you're like, okay, I was born and raised to get used to this shit, you know? Exactly. But then if it comes from your own people, it's like, my dude.
Bruh, it burns differently. Like, I remember in first year, I always say, like, whenever I think of, like, why I decided, like, I wanted to change my accent and sound more African, literally, first year tip camp, I had a bunch of girls who came to me and they were like, you can't chill with us because you're not Black enough. And I was like, hold on a minute.
Oh my God. What does that mean? I was just going to ask you, name names, and I realized you're still in Peterborough. I can name names. I can full on name names. I don't care. But you can DM me those names, Roper, after.
But, like, it took me so far back that, like, only recently did I realize that it's actually affected the way, like, if people say, like, oh my gosh, you sound, for example, people say I sound British all the time. I take that as an offense now because of that statement. And whenever people say, oh my gosh, you sound so bougie, I'm just like, no, I don't. I'm offended now. Like, I'm just catching feelings left, right, and center.
I think people also forget.
I internalized it.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, baby.
No, the internalized part, we'll come back to that because I actually want to touch on that. But I think people forget to realize that you are a product of where you grew up, you know? So you grew up in the UK, like you went to school there, so your accent is going to be that. But then some people, like, I guess the connotation and how the tone that's used in that conversation is definitely different. Like, and Beth also said a point where she said that's her whole childhood. Beth and I went to high school together, and we were both not conventionally Black. Like, everybody knows this about me, was a huge fan of Bieber. Beth, on the other side, was very punk rock. Thank you, God. I'm not gonna lie, I cried when he got married. It's fine, I'm okay. And Beth, on the other hand, like, she was super big in the whole, like, punk scene, and like, just listen to all the alternative songs we can think of. But, and like, there was also the conversation of cliques in high school, right? So there's the Black side, the Italian side, this. How was your schooling? How did you fit when you're not, forget university. Let's go back to, I guess, the more
like
developmental years. High school, yeah. Where did you fit in those?
Honestly, I don't think I realized it as much from my peers. It wasn't necessarily the skin tone, it was the mannerisms. So like Charmaine mentioned, like being called an Oreo. I've, like, all my life I've been called an Oreo. And for those who don't know what an Oreo is, it's like you're black on the outside and white on the inside.
I never understood that, because what is it like to be proper Black, or what is it like to not be proper Black? What's the difference? Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, so like I grew up being called like an Oreo or a coconut. Exactly, yummy. She feels me. A coconut. It's the same thing. You're Black on the outside and you a whole lot of white on the inside. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so like for me, I grew up almost like I almost like detached from that. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm an Oreo, I'm a rocket, I'm a live it. That's just who I am. And so I just almost like just embrace it. So throughout high school, I knew I was an Oreo, I knew I was the coconut, and it was fine. And then I came to university and I was like, these people are going to be woke. They're going to be awesome.
No, they're not.
And open-minded. But no, they were worse. And I was just like, how? It's because before I was like, maybe it's just a Zimbabwean thing.
Nope.
Maybe it's a Zimbabwean thing. When I go to university, I'll have a diverse group of people. We'll have like a little bit of East Africa, a little bit of West Africa, a little bit of Northern Africa, you know, a little sprinkle of the Caribbean out here in these streets, you know, just a melting pot. But nah, bruv.
Wait, okay, so your first year, if I remember correctly, a lot of your friends were white, right?
Yeah.
So was that a big change from high school to university, coming to like a friend group that was predominantly white, but then you also had Taksu on the side? How did you manage to jump back and forth? Because it is a jump. Like, as much as people don't want to recognize it, when you're jumping between two groups, it's exhausting.
I think for me, it was almost normal because in Zimbabwe, my group of friends were all Black. Right. And then when I moved to England, I had very few Black friends, like maybe one or two.
Right.
And then the rest of them were white or brown or anything else that's not Black, right? And so when I moved to Trent, honestly, my goal was like, I need to make more Black friends. I don't have enough Black friends in my life. I just need to gather up on the melanin.
Right.
And then when it happened at Tip Camp, because like for people who don't go to Trent, Tip Camp is essentially like the first, it's like orientation for international students before like the actual orientation for the rest of the university, right?
It's a space for international students to meet and mingle and create a communication stream before they meet all the idiots, aka my people.
Very nice. Listen, so like after orientation, I left with honestly like a bad taste in my mouth, and all the people I'd connected with at Tip Camp were not the Black people. And so it was almost like I was just pushed into the other groups of people, and I don't feel like I had a choice in who I ended up becoming friends with. Right. And then even with Taksu, I still there was still that hesitation. There were people who I managed to click with, but if you notice, they were all in the coconut area. We were all low-key just like the rejects. We were the kids who were like not quite like black enough, but not white either.
Why should blackness be defined in narrow character? That's a good point, Charmaine. That's a very good point. And I think that's what it is, right? And I think that's where a lot of the problems in the black community stem from. It's that we have such a narrow narrow like definition of what being black means. And if you don't fit even two of those characteristics, you basically step out of the black shell. And then there is no protection. And there's just so much, I guess, conversation about that. And then it fits. Can you hear my sister?
Just a little bit.
Anyways, like, and I think this conversation also like goes deeper with different subcategories, right? Religion, like, culture, you know, continents. Like, I feel like this conversation is different in Africa and different in the Caribbean, you know? Because it's definitely deeper. Like, I know I've had this conversation with Michaela and John a little bit on how different it is for them back home, and like there's people who are ostracized for being too dark. But then let's talk about this new, well, I guess now it's not new, but like when it started spiking last year, the whole dark skin love trend that was spiking last year, where like people were glorifying women and men who were darker and covered in oil, but they were put on this pedestal, and then women who were darker or men who were darker who weren't covered in oil were just looked at as if they were regular. Leave us alone, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is this?
But like, I also feel the same way about like the whole natural hair movement, period. I feel like, I
feel like even that natural hair movement, I feel like if you are a darker skinned woman with looser curls, oh my god, you is fine. But if you're a dark skinned woman with like kinky coily hair, my sister, you have a lot to figure out, you know what I'm saying? So continue, ma'am. This is your speech. I need you to face this conversation, you know?
No, like I just feel like, honestly, when it comes, anything that is put into a movement means that it's very like fickle. I don't want things to become a trend. If we're saying like we're talking about like colorism, the moment we say we're having a colorism conversation and it's a trend, I feel like, hello. I feel like the moment we make things into trends, we're almost like ignoring the root causes of things and just like plastering like bandages on top of things. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I personally, as an individual, don't like the idea of these movements. If we're gonna talk about it, like, let's really look at the root cause of these things. If we're saying that like the root cause of colorism is, I don't know, like consumerism and beauty standards, right? Like, let's really sit down and like figure out what about those beauty standards, instead of just saying, oh, beauty standards, okay, if we're going to be talking about consumerism, let's just pick a bunch of Black people and put them on an ad. Let's just make sure we have one Black person on every ad. That's not looking at the root cause. That's just matching all the things.
Diversity, is that what it is? Like, one brand should have a diverse group of models.
I feel like
is that the
diversity isn't enough.
Yes, Baba.
I feel like
yes,
okay. Just as Mamu figures out what she's doing, if you want to be added to the session, just request and I can add you guys just so that we continue to have this conversation. For all the people who are new, we're talking about colorism. Specifically today, we're talking about colorism in the Black community. Next week, I'm going to be talking about colorism in the brown community, because I got a lot of DMs from people saying, hey, we go through similar things in the brown community. Can you talk about it for the brown community?
I think Black colorism is a big thing everywhere, because I was watching a documentary. I've been watching a lot of documentaries. It's not
okay, baby.
I've been watching a lot of documentaries about colorism, and the other day I was watching a documentary on Filipino colorism, and there was one, we'll talk about this, I guess you guys will talk about it another time, but there was the whole conversation of bleaching creams. Let's talk about that. because growing up, that's, especially if you grew up in back home, like bleaching creams is such a big thing that I think the whole Black love thing only came to me here, like while I moved to Canada. But like I still like saw people bleaching and get the blotchy skin and the burnt skin and all of it. So I think that's what we need to start. It's like these outsiders are essentially telling us that our skin is not good enough, and we're taking that advice, we're taking the creams that they're presenting to us, and it's the whole conversation of consumerism. We're taking it and we are changing ourselves to fit this narrative that they themselves are rejecting, and hence the tans, hence the plastic surgeries. You know, like they do so much to be us, and we're doing so much to be them. So what is the middle? Like, where do we stop this capitalistic society, and where do we fit in this capitalistic society?
See, but that's why I think like diversity isn't enough. If you just have people who are stooges and are just representing people, but not actually tackling the problems that those groups of people face, you're not doing anything.
Yes.
You're just having faces there.
Mom. My family doesn't know when someone is.
They don't want you to be great, sis.
They don't want me to. No.
They don't want you to be great.
They don't want me to great. Okay, 1 second. Go to somebody else. We'll come back later. Thank you,
Coolie Beans, thank you so much. You are awesome.
That's the whole point of.
We are going to add somebody else. What's good?
Hi, how's it going? I had this thing set up real fast, and I was like, "Oh, whoa, we're live right now."
I gave you really short notice, so I really appreciate you coming through, baby girl.
No problem. Hi, Amy. Hi, John.
So shout out to you. I'm just gonna say, like, guys, this entire conversation was like inspired by this lovely lady over here. Like I think like a month and a half ago, I sent you guys like a thing saying like, what do you guys want me to talk about on these like live sessions? And she suggested that we talk about colorism, and I was kind of just like, you know, soothing on it, and I'm kind of thinking about how do I contribute to this conversation? And it just so happened that this week just happened to be the time where everything just went kapoom. And I thought, honestly, you would be a really valuable member to this conversation. And so introduce yourself to the peoples, tell them who you are, and describe, how would you describe your skin tone? And then we'll go from there.
Alrighty, so for those of you who don't know me, I am Mana. I'm sorry, my phone is on my computer, so that's why.
No judgment here, baby. It's
cool. So I attend Trent. I'm going to my 4th year. That's crazy. And I've been in Canada for about 18 years or so, you know, don't have an accent. So, you know, we've been acclimatized to Canadian culture.
Okay.
And my skin tone, very, 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 you can just look at me. Like, I'm from South Sudan. We're dark. We're dark.
Yes, baby.
There. Apparently, you know, we have a Guinness World Record of someone owning the darkest skin, Queen Yakim. She's a model.
Yes.
And, you know, the reason why I wanted to talk about colorism because, you know, like, you know how you're saying we're talking about it within the community? I feel like I've experienced it more within my own people versus outside. Only because, you know, I think my first introduction with colorism happened in about, I think, grade 7, grade 6-ish or whatever. I was being bullied. I was being bullied by my cousins, which is actually quite ironic because, you know, we're both from South Sudan, you know, we're both dark skinned, but, you know, for guys, it was just kind of like, you know, oh, everyone else was like, quote unquote, bullying people for the dark skin. We're gonna jump on this train, and like, you know, I get called names like darky or like, you know, moonshine and like all that kind of stuff, and like, you know, people would turn off the lights and be like, oh my god, where did Nana go and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bruh.
Yeah, like it got to a point where like my mom almost had to take me out of school just because of how much the bullying was getting. And just when it happens at that point, at your adolescence, that's when you're going towards your teenage years. And what
Yeah.
happens at that point really affects how you're gonna grow up and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank goodness I had a good support system with like my family and everything, because it could have went a pretty wrong way. Like, I've
Yeah.
had cousins who bleached their skin and all of that, resulting because of being bullied for their skin color. So it was kind of just like, even though I didn't get to that extremity, like it was there. It was always there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was always inside the house. I even have aunts and stuff saying, oh, you should try, a little bit of skin lightening cream, this, and that, a little bit won't hurt. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you see, where it starts as a little bit, that's how it progresses. And there was
Yeah.
a point made that Charmaine said that it's internalized racism.
Mm-hmm.
100%,
Mm-hmm.
100%, 100%. Like, colorism is a direct effect of colonialism, because with
Mm.
all the British people coming into multiple of our African countries, setting the standard that, lighter skin is what's wanted,
Yeah.
so you should attain to be this level of lightness to be accepted by us.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it hasn't changed, that conversation hasn't changed, because a lot of jobs nowadays, a lot of people still go by this European centered beauty, this
Mm.
Eurocentric future that, when you look like this, you're more favorable and more people are
Mm.
gonna want to see you and accept you.
Mm-hmm.
Besides like those cases that I had when I was growing up, when I got to like high school and like university, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad per se for like the bullying wise. People were more
Mm-hmm.
like, like understanding and accepting. But it's around grade 12, right before like that university jump, I got
Yeah.
called a comment saying, oh man, I like, you're pretty for a dark skin. And I was
Bruh.
like, oh,
What does it
oh,
mean?
for a dark
What does
skin,
that mean?
what does that mean? Am I pretty? Is it because I'm dark that I'm pretty? Is like what do you
What?
mean? And
What?
well, I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't know how to say like thank you. Obviously I said thank you and I moved on with it, but it was just kind of
Mm.
like it got me thinking like why did they have to add in that for a dark skin
For dark
person,
skin.
And see, the thing is, it was a
Mm.
black guy who said it to me. That's what's getting me. So it just got me thinking, like, how bad is it rooted into our own people's minds that they can't look past it and not say I'm just a beautiful person,
Mm.
Um, so then like it kind of was like, maybe I need to go reflect and go on a little self-help kind of like, journey and kind of see where I find myself in those spectrums and just seeing how I interact with people and all that kind of stuff. So by doing all of that, it just made me realize like just a lot of it is what the old generation is putting on our minds and all that kind of stuff, but also it's just the fact that a lot of our own age mates are very ignorant to the fact that colorism is a real thing, that they kind of just brush it
Mm.
off, oh,
Mm.
it's not that bad, it's not that bad, people are always bullying light skins like for being too pretty, this and that, and I'm like, okay, that's
Mm.
not the same
Different
as
struggles, baby.
that's different struggles, we're not trying to knock down your own struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to knock down mine. I'm just trying to bring light to a situation that's not
Yeah.
being talked about. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't help when you have like big celebrities, big rappers and all that using derogatory terms to like, dark skinned women and then uplifting the
Mm-hmm.
light skins, because it kind of puts
You
people
better
into
preach,
two
girl.
it puts people into two
Mm.
categories, like, am I attractive or am I not? And then that
Mm.
brings the conversation to like colorism again, because it's like, is it colorist for me to have this preference for lighter people, or is it, and all of that? And I'm just like,
Girl.
preference,
Internalize some,
internalize, a little
some.
internalize
A
for
little bit of some, some.
yourself. Exactly,
Yeah.
man. These aren't the oppression Olympics, literally. Because
I can't with the comments, honestly.
it's just, oh man, like it's a lot of hate in our own community, and it's quite sad to see. It's really sad to see because it does happen in other like countries, predominantly in the Asian as well as the African countries for like, you know, dark skin and all that. But compared to a lot of other cultures, this is where we as Black people lack. We don't come together about discussing what our issues are, because you know it's kind of like they just kind of like brush it aside. And like for me too, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, you're pretty, so like it's okay, like, you know, even though you're dark, you're still pretty. And I'm like, okay, but like that doesn't make a difference, you know. What if
Yeah.
someone else you find is my exact same complexion but you don't find them pretty? Are you gonna automatically treat them differently?
Mm.
You know, so what does that make you as a person? Like, what hate do you have within yourself that you're gonna project it against other people? And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because the ones who be projecting it usually be having mothers who are Black, you know,
Mm-hmm.
sisters who are Black, aunts and women in their life who are Black. And I have to say, like, you know, if these women aren't checking their behavior right from the get-go, how are they going to be able to check it? You know, whenever they see any of us trying to correct that behavior, we're just going to be placed in that mad Black woman category right away, you
Mm.
know? And it's like,
Mm.
I'm mad, yes, just because you don't see like that cloth of colorism hasn't lifted from your eyes, baby. It hasn't lifted from your eyes, and you need to see that, you know, you're in the wrong. You can have preferences, you can do whatever, you can date whoever you want, but if you have to put down other people just to make you feel better about it, then there's something wrong about that
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
I
um
think even Mamu said in the comments, can we also talk about people who benefit from men, oh, light-skinned people who benefit from men putting us down?
yeah.
100%.
Why? Ah, woo. Wow,
Listen,
wow, wow, wow,
Listane,
wow,
Listane. But what
wow,
I'm also beginning
wow.
to realize is that the light skin, dark skin conversation is predominantly for women.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
I was the big story that like really inspired me to get onto this conversation is I don't know if you heard about the whole Twitter situation that happened in the UK with all these
Yes,
influencers.
yes, yeah,
And
yeah.
if you notice, the people who got the most backlash were the women.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the people who got the times two backlash were the darker skinned women.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
tells you a lot about like what like the narrative of the conversation is. It's
Mhm.
almost like on the hierarchy, if there was like an invisible hierarchy of people, like black men, and then it's black women.
Mhm.
And then we fight amongst each other and they fight against us.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's almost like an us them mentality of like, oh, you know, we like this group of people, we like that group of people, we like these attributes and not these attributes. And
Mhm.
so it's almost like instead of black women determining what is beautiful, we have black men determining what's beautiful, we have white people determining what's beautiful, we have the media determining what's beautiful, we have
Mhm.
everything but us
Yeah.
determining what's beautiful. And then when we're given the opportunity to make those laws and to really like essentially define who we ourselves have internalized this so much that we can't even see that we're part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the issue that lies with that is with Black men. A lot of them are in, like, you know, sports. A lot of them are in, you know, a lot of these big audiences. So like they're
Mm-hmm.
exposed a lot more to like different races and all that. And a lot of the times they're over sexualized. I 100% feel like the Black people as a race themselves were over
Mm-hmm.
sexualized, you know, saying, you know, girls are way more mature when they're younger, and then like guys, I've seen like, you know, newscasters and just people making comments saying, oh, I would love to be with a Black guy, this and that. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in that sense, it's a bit positive in a backwards way on the Black man. So, you know, sometimes it can fuel them, it can make them believe that, okay, you know, if these people are accepting me, like, it doesn't matter about my own people, like, I'm already accepted, so that's all that matters. Like, I'm still Black, but, you know, you can go from there. So then when it comes
Okay,
to
wait.
yeah.
It's saying that we're left with like 15 seconds, so it might like go haywire.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna start a new live after this if it shuts out in like 5, 4, 3,
2.
2.
Kishikira makuziwa, yeah, yeah.